Hey everybody, it's Master Gallengeist here, bringing you my review for Thor issue 15. And I really enjoyed this issue because it started to delve more into what's been going on between Mjolnir and Thor. Now, granted, there's slight action in this one, but this is more of a slower issue, pretty much that kind of falling action. We got everything kind of done with the Donald Blake thing. Now we're kind of building ourselves back up to this next bit of dealing with what is going on with Mjolnir. So we see that everybody's kind of celebrating in the hall and all that. We've got Thor at the head. Volstag's pretty much trying to tell the story of like everything that was going on, but he comes to the bit where like Thor's imprisoned in where Blake was, and Volstagg called it a fairy tale, and this kind of sets Thor off, being like, "No, it wasn't a fairy tale. I felt helpless. I couldn't control my lightning. I saw him. Couldn't control the hammer. Couldn't. I couldn't stop my home from being burned, and it. He just lets it kind of loose. But of course, he's very sorry after his outburst. Says, "I'm sorry. I've had too much to drink." Kind of leaves. Volstagg's like, "Too much to drink." Trying to kind of like play it off a little bit, but then. Thor's back in his room trying to figure out what's going on with the hammer. But then he's like, "What's wrong with you? What's wrong with me?" Before the hammer, like, pretty much attacks him and goes onto his chest as he's on the floor and has a table broken. Loki then pops up, like, "Oh, do you need help?" It's like, pretty much playing off that he was drunk and then he fell. And he's like, "The hammer, it won't let me up." And then, of course, Loki's able to lift it up and he helps him up. And I do like this kind of new relationship between two kings now, pretty much, but they have a kind of more amicable relationship. And he's like, "You can't tell a soul this." And he's like, "Yeah, to play it off, just somebody being drunk and everything." And he's like, "All right, so where are you gonna be going now?" So he's got Mjolnir. And he's like, "All right, I'm gonna go to Sif. I'm gonna go to Midgard, and I'm gonna end this." We then shift over, and it's really interesting to see how Donnie deals with the Avengers in this scenario, because we're on Midgard and we see Captain Marvel, Iron Man, She-Hulk, Blade, and Robbie Reyes kind of dealing with this like cyber monster attack. And they're like, "Yeah, we don't know what's going on with this, but let's just give him a fight," as Cap's doing it. And I'm like, this is an interesting kind of. He has a very interesting kind of, I'd say, flavoring to Cap, because this Cap's like, he's still good, but he's a little bit looser with his language. He's like, "I don't give a damn. Let's give these things a fight." It's like, interesting. Okay, let's see how he kind of like works with this. So they're kind of like getting overrun by these guys, but then of course Thor pops up and he's like, "Cap, I gotta have a discussion with you in private, if you please." He's like, "Sure, buddy. I just got a problem going on here." And Jen's like, "Yeah, robot monsters?" And he's like, "Oh, pardon me." And then just whoosh, lightning the man. And Don is like, "All right, that kind of works." Of course, Tony pops up to him first and is like, "Hey, man, so you come to concede in our little prank war?" And he kind of lightnings him. He's like, "Whoa, that was uncalled for." And Cap's like, "Whoa, what's going on, man?" He's like, "Hey, I know we need to talk and everything, but you shouldn't have been going for that, man." And then Thor's like, "Oh God, Cap, put your guard up." And he's like, "What the?" Mjolnir strikes at Cap, and he's able to put the shield on him. He's like, "You hit me." He's like, I'm sorry, Cap. Mjolnir acted on its own. We really need to like discuss this." He's like, "Yeah, sure, whatever." Because Cap's like, "Whoa, this is some big shit. We need to do this." And by the way, I do like the art style that's going on here, because it really is an interesting look at like Iron Man's armor, especially coming from like his other series. I always like seeing like new armors introduced, because it's interesting to see different artists take. And I also really like how the artist does like Thor a lot with the beard and everything, and Cap, it just works. So they're kind of like, "All right, we got something to discuss." So they go to Avengers Mountain, and Thor starts off with like, "When's the last time we saw each other, Steve?" And he's like, "Oh, dealing with Null." And then the Phoenix Force thing, "What's going on with this?" And Thor then gets into it, be like, "You know, immortality, it's the burden of gods and, and burden of me and all that kind of stuff." And he's like, "You, like, all these battles and everything, it's such a long enough time that it's like coming down here and trying to remember that. It's like me trying to remember what I had for breakfast a year ago. And he's always happy when he comes back and then his friends are still alive because he's lost so many. He's missed so many like lives and all those good things in him that he's always happy that when he comes back that his friends are still alive. And that's a hard thing, man. That's like, oof, damn. And Cap's like, yeah, I kind of understand that from me being in yes, but what's going on here, man? Well, what's going on with Mjolnir? He's like, well, I used to be the tip of the spear for Odin. This hammer was forged for a warrior, and I used to be that, but I'm not that anymore. And the thing is, I'm also not a king yet. But we see it's like, okay, this is kind of seeing that Thor needs to cement himself as the king, and he's like, the thing is, I know I'm not that hammer anymore. At the end of the issue, as he leaves Mjolnir pretty much on the table for, I guess, Cap and the others to keep in, as he's going to have to figure out this thing of like going on this quest to truly get himself into the king role and probably trying to find the next person that would wield Mjolnir as the hammer for Asgard. Because his whole plan is to, he's like, alright, I'm going to live 1,000 years, 1,000 generations, and I want Asgard to outlive me, and I've got to do these things to make sure that that happens right. It's like, okay, let us see how this goes. Interesting. I'm like, this is kind of what I thought was going to be what's going on. Not your typical kind of like unworthiness. Not that Thor is technically unworthy at all, but this hammer is usually forged for the person that's going to be like the vanguard of protecting the worlds of the world tree of Yggdrasil. And Thor is kind of in a transitionary period, and it's not like he's unworthy, it's just Mjolnir is like, I need my wielder. And we see all these other people being able to pick it up and everything. It's like, okay, we'll have to... This is almost like a dual quest of like Thor going on to cement himself as king, and then Mjolnir trying to find that next wielder for it, potentially, and how that's going to have to kind of shake it up. I'm like, okay, I'm interested in seeing this. I like the kind of epic connotations with all this kind of stuff, because you usually see a lot of warriors questing for a certain kind of thing, and it's interesting to see a warrior kind of going beyond that to be like, okay, I've done all these things, now I have to lead. What does that mean? Does that mean I can never fight? Or does that mean that I cannot be the one that always goes into the fight, and then I have to find that kind of person that will essentially take on that role? It's like, okay, I'm digging this. I kind of want to see where this goes. So I'm like, yeah, all right. So I think this is a really good arc to come down from what we dealt with Donald Blake, and then set up some interesting kind of things to come from this. So those are my opinions on the issue. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. Also like and subscribe, and I hope you have a good day.